Have you ever been in a relationship where, just when things start to feel really good, like you're finally connecting, finally being seen, finally building something real, the other person suddenly pulls away, they go silent, they become distant, maybe they even start a fight over something small, and you're left asking what just happened? Now, if you're dealing with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, that moment right there is a major clue that they care about you. Because here's the paradox: avoidants don't pull away because they're not in love. They pull away because they are. And I know that sounds backwards. We've all been conditioned to believe that when someone loves you, they get closer. They show affection. They move toward you. That's the fairy tale version of intimacy. But people with avoidant tendencies didn't grow up with fairy tales. They grew up learning that closeness can be unsafe, that getting too emotionally attached often leads to pain, rejection, or engulfment. So, what happens when someone like that starts to actually love you? They retreat, not because they want to lose you, but because love to them feels like a threat. It pokes at old wounds that say you're safer on your own. It triggers internal alarms: this is too much. You're getting too close. You're going to lose yourself. And in those moments, the avoidant doesn't always consciously know what's going on. They may even rationalize their distancing. I need space. I'm busy. It's not the right time. But what's actually happening is a flood of emotional dysregulation, because love, real love, requires vulnerability. And vulnerability is the very thing avoidants have spent a lifetime avoiding. Psychologically, it's rooted in their early attachment experiences. Maybe they had caregivers who were emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, or dismissive. Maybe love came with strings attached: perform well and I'll approve of you, fail and I'll withdraw. So they learned to self-soothe, to shut down, to stay safe by staying distant. Now fast forward to adulthood, and suddenly this person meets you. You're consistent, you care, you bring warmth and depth, and something in them wants to lean in, but their system is screaming danger. So what do? They pull away, just when things are going well, just when you think this could be something special. But here's the part most people miss: that retreat, that moment of silence or withdrawal. It's not always rejection. Sometimes it's a survival mechanism. Sometimes it's a scared inner child saying, I don't know how to do this. Please don't hurt me. And here's where your own emotional awareness becomes critical. If you take that withdrawal personally, if you start to chase or panic or beg for closeness, it only confirms the avoidant's deepest fear: that relationships demand too much, that intimacy means losing control. But if you can stay grounded, if you can hold space for them without collapsing into their fear, you give them something they've probably never experienced: the safety of being loved without pressure. This doesn't mean you tolerate emotional neglect. This doesn't mean you abandon your needs. It means you learn to see what's really going on beneath the surface. You stop asking, why are they pulling away from me? And start asking, what does their fear of closeness say about the depth of this connection? Because here's the truth: avoidants don't withdraw from people they don't care about. They don't go through this inner battle over casual flings. The ones who trigger their defenses the most are usually the ones who matter the most. So if you find yourself in a relationship where someone is pulling away just as things start to feel intimate, don't automatically assume the worst. Look deeper, understand the fear, acknowledge your own, and then decide, can I navigate this with clarity and compassion? Or is this dynamic not sustainable for me? Either way, you grow. Because what this really comes down to is your ability to stay emotionally sovereign, to not collapse when someone else disconnects, to not overfunction just to maintain closeness, to not sacrifice your authenticity for temporary comfort. When you can do that, you don't just understand avoidance. You become someone who's capable of creating real, mature, conscious love. And that's where transformation begins. So here's what I want you to walk away with. If they're pulling away, it doesn't always mean they don't love you. Sometimes it means they do, and love, for them, feels terrifying. Let that sink in. And then ask yourself, what kind of love do I want to build? And am I strong enough to build it with someone who's still learning how to stay? Because love isn't just about connection. It's about courage. When most people think of love, they think of words. I love you, I miss you, I need you. We've been taught to expect declarations, texts, long conversations, emotional vulnerability poured out in poetic sentences. But when you're in a relationship with someone who has avoidant tendencies, expecting that kind of verbal affection can feel like trying to draw water from a stone. And here's the mistake most people make. They assume the absence of words means the absence of love. That's not always true. In fact, with avoidant partners, the most powerful expressions of love often aren't spoken. They're shown. Avoidants express love through action. It's subtle, it's quiet, but it's real. And if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it. You'll miss the fact that they remembered your coffee order, that they fixed the broken thing in your apartment without being asked, that they showed up when it really mattered, even if they didn't say much. Why do they love this way? Because for them, words feel dangerous, words make things real, and real intimacy, emotional vulnerability, has always been a high-risk zone. If you grow up believing that needing people makes you weak, or that expressing emotion leads to rejection or loss of control, then saying I love you doesn't feel romantic. It feels like walking into a battlefield unarmed, but doing something, showing up, helping out, making your life easier, that feels safer. It's how they learn to give value without risking exposure. It's controlled, it's concrete. And it's often the only way they know how to love. Now, let's get clear about something. This doesn't mean they don't feel deeply. In fact, many avoidants feel more than they can process. The problem is, their emotional processing system isn't wired for open expression. Their early life experiences likely taught them to manage feelings privately. So, they build emotional walls, not because they don't want love, but because they don't know how to be in it without losing themselves. So they do what they know. They perform love, not in a fake way, but in a functional way. You get in their car and the seat heater's already on because they know your hands get cold. They tell you to text them when you get home, even if they don't text all day. They work overtime to make sure you don't have to worry about something they can control. These aren't grand gestures, they're practical. But they are their version of I care about you deeply, and I don't know how to say it out loud. And here's the shift. If you're in a relationship with someone like this, you've got to stop measuring love in words alone. Because the truth is, not everyone was raised to speak the same emotional language. Some people speak in tasks, in loyalty, in presence. They won't always tell you how they feel, but they'll build you a bookshelf. That's love, that's vulnerability, just in a different dialect. The mistake people make, especially in modern dating, is assuming that love needs to look a certain way to be valid. That if it's not emotionally expressive and verbally affirming, it's not real. But if you're waiting for the avoidant to suddenly start gushing their heart out, you'll miss the fact that they already are, just in a way that's unfamiliar. Now, this doesn't mean you settle for silence forever. Healthy relationships require communication. They require growth from both people, but that growth often starts with understanding. First, why they're showing love this way, and second, how to meet each other in the middle. You have every right to express what you need to say. Words matter to me, but it's also powerful to pause and ask, what do their actions say about how they love? Because sometimes, I brought your car in for service, is their way of saying, I'm thinking about your safety, because I want you in my life for a long time. And yes, love should evolve. Avoidants can and do learn to express more over time. But they grow in environments where they feel emotionally safe, not judged or pressured to perform affection in ways that feel foreign or forced. So your role isn't to fix them. It's to observe, to listen differently, to recognize effort, not just expression. And to decide for yourself, can I receive love in a form that doesn't look like mine, but still holds depth and meaning? Because in the end, love isn't always poetic. Sometimes love looks like checking the air pressure in your tires before a long drive. Sometimes it's fixing what's broken, not because they were asked, but because they noticed. And if you pay attention to those quiet signals, you might discover that love is happening all around you, not in words, but in motion. Most people assume that love, when it's real, comes with openness, with raw, honest communication, with that feeling of I can tell you anything. And for some people, that's exactly how love works. They fall in, walls down, hearts wide open. But if you're loving someone with an avoidant attachment style, the reality looks very different. Avoidants don't fall into love. They edge into it, cautiously, quietly, and very, very slowly, because for them, vulnerability isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. It's exposing. It's a risk they've spent their entire life trying to avoid, and when they love you, that internal resistance doesn't magically disappear. In fact, it often intensifies. Here's the paradox that most people don't realize. When avoidants start to develop real feelings, they don't relax. They brace because love demands something they've spent years trying not to feel emotional exposure. And for someone whose survival has been tied to staying self-sufficient, staying guarded, staying in control, vulnerability feels like standing in front of a firing squad with no armor. This is where things get confusing because you know they care. You see glimpses, a deep look, a moment of softness, a sentence that catches you off guard, and then they retreat, they deflect, they change the subject. Or they make a sarcastic joke just to dilute the moment. It's not that they don't feel. It's that feeling in front of you is terrifying. Psychologically, this comes down to early emotional conditioning. Avoidants often grew up in environments where feelings were dismissed, punished, or outright ignored. They learned quickly that emotional vulnerability either got them hurt, made them feel weak, or earned them nothing in return. So their nervous system adapted. They learned to regulate by withdrawing, to soothe themselves internally, not reach outward for connection. Now here you come open, available, ready to connect. And the deeper the relationship gets, the more you ask for closeness. You want to know what's on their mind, what's in their heart. But every time you press for intimacy, it pushes against the very mechanism they've used to stay safe, emotional distance. But here's the crucial piece. When an avoidant loves you, they don't just run. They try. It may not look like much to you. It might be a short sentence about something personal. It might be them sharing a story from their past they've never told anyone. It might be a text that says, "I'm not good at this, but I'm trying." These are not small things. These are massive steps for someone wired to keep their inner world locked down. The mistake many people make is expecting vulnerability to look like a flood. But for avoidance, it shows up in drops. And each drop is a breakthrough. And the truth is, they are terrified of being judged for it. Vulnerability to them feels like standing naked in the spotlight. So even when they do open up, they're scanning for your reaction. Did you flinch? Did you laugh it off? Did you say too much in return and overwhelm them? That's why how you respond matters. If you want more emotional availability from someone with avoidant tendencies, don't demand it. Honor it, make it safe when they open up. No matter how small, don't analyze it, don't over-celebrate it, and for the love of all things good, Don't use it against them later. Just be there, calm, grounded, present, because avoidants grow not when they're pushed, but when they're trusted to grow at their own pace. And yes, this is frustrating if you're someone who values emotional expression and deep connection. You want to go there, you want the heart to hearts, the late night talks, the emotional transparency. And that's valid. Your needs matter too, but emotional intimacy is not a one-size-fits-all journey. It's a negotiation between history's wounds and nervous systems. So ask yourself, can you recognize the effort even when it doesn't match your expectations? Because for the avoidant, trying to be vulnerable is love in its most courageous form. It's them going against their instincts, overriding old programming, and stepping into discomfort. Not because it feels good, but because you matter. And when you see it for what it is, a brave, trembling step toward closeness, you stop taking it personally and start appreciating just how much strength it takes to show even a glimpse of emotion. This is how trust is built. Not with pressure, not with ultimatums, but with patience, with awareness, with compassion. Love asks us to meet people where they are, not where we wish they'd be. And when you understand the emotional terrain of someone who's learning to be vulnerable, you realize it's not that they're incapable of connection. They just never had a map. And now, for the first time, they're trying to draw one with you. One of the most confusing and painful things about loving someone with an avoidant attachment style is this. Just when things seem stable, just when you think you're finally breaking through, they push you away, not always dramatically. Sometimes it's subtle, a cold tone, a missed call, a week of emotional distance, and you're left wondering, what did I do wrong? But here's the twist that most people never see coming. Avoidants don't just push away when they're angry or bored or done. They often do it when they're getting attached. Because closeness for someone with an avoidant nervous system isn't just intimacy. It's pressure, it's risk, it's uncertainty. The deeper the emotional connection becomes, the more exposed they feel. And that exposure, instead of drawing them in, activates their old programming. Back away before you get hurt. So what do? They test you, not in an obvious, manipulative way, but in subtle, unconscious patterns that all come down to one core question. Are you going to leave me like everyone else did? Avoidants expect abandonment. They've been wired for it. Maybe they had a parent who was emotionally inconsistent. Maybe they were taught that love is conditional. Or maybe they were praised for their independence so much that asking for connection now feels like failure. Whatever the origin, the belief is the same. People leave, and emotional dependence is dangerous. So even when they love you, even when they really love you, they start to look for confirmation of that fear. They might pick a fight over nothing. They might withdraw without explanation. They might suddenly question the relationship and say things like, I just don't know if I'm ready, or I feel like I'm losing myself. What they're really saying is, this is getting too real and I don't know how to stay safe in it. It's a paradox because on the surface, they seem like they're pushing you away, but underneath, they're watching to see if you'll come closer. If you'll still choose them when they're messy, when they're distant, when they're hard to reach. It's a defense mechanism, yes, but it's also a plea. Can you handle the parts of me that I've spent my whole life hiding? Now, let's be honest. This dynamic is exhausting, especially if you're someone who values stability, clear communication, and consistency. Being tested like this can feel unfair, even manipulative, and in some cases, it absolutely crosses into unhealthy territory. You should never tolerate emotional games or cycles of push-pull that leave you feeling drained or diminished. But if you recognize that this behavior isn't about controlling you, it's about protecting themselves, you start to see it differently. You see it as fear masquerading as detachment. You see a person who doesn't know how to trust love, even when it's standing right in front of them. And that's where your power comes in. Because when someone with an avoidant pattern tests you, they're looking for proof. Will you run the moment I pull back? Will you get angry and abandon me emotionally, just like I always feared? But when you respond with clarity instead of panic, with groundedness instead of reactivity, something shifts. You're no longer feeding their fear. You're challenging it. You're showing them, I'm not here to control you, but I'm not disappearing either. This doesn't mean you become a doormat. Boundaries are critical. It's okay to say, I care about you, but I won't play emotional hide and seek. What matters is the tone. You hold your line with compassion, not punishment. You stay present, but not at the cost of your own peace. Because avoidants don't grow when they're chased. They grow when they feel safe enough to stop running. That's when the testing starts to fade. That's when they begin to believe, maybe for the first time, that love doesn't have to mean loss. That connection doesn't have to cost them their identity. That staying doesn't have to feel like surrender. And that belief, that changes everything. But here's the hard truth. Not everyone is willing or ready to unlearn their fear of intimacy. Some people get stuck in the pattern. They test, push, retreat, repeat. And you have to know when to walk away. Loving someone doesn't mean saving them from themselves. Your role isn't to pass their tests. Your role is to stay rooted in your truth. To know what kind of love you're willing to give, and what kind you're no longer willing to beg for. So the next time someone pulls away right when things are going well, don't just ask, why are they doing this to me? Ask, what fear is this revealing? And am I the one meant to meet it? Because sometimes love means staying. Sometimes it means letting go. But either way, you don't lose, you learn.